They beat him until his hair came out in clumps, but Peter Tosh walked straight into the studio and created this. The shocking truth behind Jamaica's most brutal police attack, and how one album became the ultimate middle finger to tyranny. You've never heard Bush Doctor like this before. It was September 11th, 1978, and what should have been an ordinary waiting period before a session with Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare spiraled instead into something far more sinister. He didn't know it then, but the man in plain clothes who approached him with a casual tap on the shoulder wasn't just a police officer. He was Babylon incarnate. This was the moment the state had been waiting for ever since Peter Tosh had blown smoke into the faces of Prime Minister Michael Manley, his cabinet, and police chiefs at the One Love Peace concert just 5 months earlier. The system didn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. That concert was no mere stage performance. It was a spiritual insurrection. Before tens of thousands, Peter Tosh didn't just sing. He unleashed a sermon of fury and defiance that seared through the national consciousness. He scolded the political elite like a firebrand prophet in a Rastafarian robe, daring to name names and make accusations while looking power dead in the eye. The Prime Minister sat only meters away, imprisoned by diplomatic decorum, as Peter hurled verbal fireballs cloaked in herb smoke. That moment, etched into the fabric of reggae history, baptized Peter Tosh not just as a musician, but as a revolutionary. And revolutions always come at a price. The real payback came not on stage, but in the shadows. The officer who took Peter's joint did more than confiscate a spliff. He symbolically crushed freedom of expression. And when Peter refused to walk into the trap willingly, when he crushed the joint and scattered it like dust on the wind, he unwittingly triggered Babylon's brutality. He was dragged to the halfway tree police station like a dissident caught on the wrong side of an iron regime. 10 officers waited for him in that cell, not to question, not to process, but to deliver punishment. They beat him with everything they could find: batons, fire weapon butts, fists, boots. They broke his bones. They tore locks from his scalp. They cracked his skull. It wasn't an arrest. It was a state-sanctioned crucifixion meant to make him an example. But you don't unalive a prophet with fists. When Peter Tosh emerged, bloodied but unbowed, the image of him holding a clump of his own hair, arm in a cast, wounds still fresh, ricocheted through Jamaica and far beyond. Babylon had shown its face. The world gasped, and Peter, instead of hiding, went back to the studio. Pain became percussion. Rage became rhythm. And from the ashes of that ambush rose Bush Doctor, the album that would declare once and for all that the stepping razor could not be dulled. The album's opening line was, "You gotta walk and don't look back," a melodic collaboration with Mick Jagger that concealed fire beneath its sheen. Critics claimed it was too polished, too pop, too friendly. But the contrast was the point. It was a Trojan horse, sweet-sounding enough for radio waves, but loaded with defiance for those who could read between the rhythms. And once you were inside the album, the real message revealed itself. Pick Myself Up followed next, deceptively simple in its optimism, yet rooted in a survivor's creed. It was Peter's way of saying, "You tried. You failed." The song didn't need complex metaphors because its power lay in the clarity of its resolve. To be beaten, left bleeding, and still sing of hope is a kind of resistance more dangerous than any weapon. Then came I Am That I Am, better known as The Toughest, a blistering rebuke to anyone who thought they could define or limit him. This track reached into Peter's marrow. It was a self-portrait, not an artist, but of a warrior. Over a thunderous backdrop orchestrated by Sly and Robbie, Peter became scripture, incorruptible, untouchable. When he revived Soon Come, a track from a decade prior, wasn't nostalgia, it was prophecy. Sung this time with the weight of pain and the clarity of rebirth, it became a hymn for patience sharpened by suffering. Moses the prophet echoed this sentiment too, linking Peter to a lineage of liberators: Elijah, Jeremiah, Marcus Garvey. He was not a man anymore. He was a movement. Then there was Bush Doctor, the title track. This wasn't a song, it was a manifesto. Written in the immediate aftermath of the halfway tree attack, it was as raw as his wounds and as urgent as a riot. It turned Peter from victim to visionary. He wasn't just calling for legalization. He was demanding liberation. He wasn't asking. He was commanding. With every beat, he transformed trauma into testimony. The Mega Dog, another resurrected anthem, took on new venom in this context. Previously a cautionary tale about betrayal, it now read like a warning to those in power who dared to bite the hands of their own people. And creation. The closing track was a gospel, a sprawling 6-minute sermon set to the sound of waves and birds, grounding his message in both spirit and soil. It was a requiem, a resurrection, a reckoning. The album didn't top charts. It didn't earn platinum plaques. But it wasn't made for that. It was made for those who still heard the drumbeat of rebellion in the marrow of their bones. It was for those who saw Babylon for what it was and still dared to dance in the fire. For those, Bush Doctor wasn't just music, it was medicine. Mick Jagger might have wanted an international reggae crossover star, but what he got was a revolutionary in dreadlocks who couldn't be contained by studio walls or commercial polish. That conflict would eventually end Peter's relationship with Rolling Stones Records. Creative control wasn't a debate for Peter Tosh, it was a necessity. After the beating he suffered, every note he sang was a defiance, every lyric a demand. You don't share the steering wheel with the same system that tried to destroy you. And that's what makes Bush Doctor sacred. It's not just an album, it's the sound of survival. It's the sound of a man who stared down a wall of uniforms and came out singing. In a world that tried to silence Peter Tosh, he turned his scream into a symphony. Years later, when people listen to that album, many miss the blood that seeps through the bars of its bass lines. They don't hear the bones cracking beneath the drum beats. They don't smell the cell where he was beaten or feel the heat of herb smoke curling into a room full of politicians who suddenly realized that music could be more dangerous than bullets. But for those who know, for those who really listen, Bush Doctor is a testimony. It's a requiem for oppression and a psalm for resistance. It's what happens when a man's voice refuses to die, even when everything else tries to unalive it. Peter Tosh wasn't singing to entertain. He was singing to expose, to awaken, to warn. He wasn't a pop star. He was a prophet. And at Halfway Tree, they tried to crucify him. But in the studio, he resurrected himself, track by track, verse by verse, beat by beat. And that's why Bush Doctor endures. Not because of how many records it sold, but because it is living proof that Babylon can bruise the body, but it can never silence the soul. Can music really be more powerful than brutality? Do you believe an album can carry the scars of a revolution? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to know how Bush Doctor sounds to you now. And if you crave more hidden histories and untold truths that shook the world, don't forget to subscribe. There's a lot more coming you don't want to miss.